has been impeached forever. They can never erase that.
The House conducts another.
Name the managers. We go to the floor.
Stepping forward for round 2. You can save for the future.
January is a great time to give your retirement a step up.
Without going broke now.
It's not going to hurt your paycheck a lot.
A step-by-step plan.
There's 2 important things to financial freedom.
To step up your retirement.
Happy birthday, dear Millie.
Retire? No way.
Good morning.
Coming up at 6, remember Millie?
Out of 20.
The hardware store clerk
5 mornings a week.
builds herself a milestone.
ABC 6 News at 5 on your side starts now.
A live look at Washington, D.C. Any moment now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will hand deliver the Articles of Impeachment to the Senate. She'll be joined by the 7 managers, the House Clerk, and the House Sergeant at Arms. But there could be a major twist tonight. CNN reports the Senate will refuse to accept the articles.
Well, the Democrats say they're doing what's right and necessary. The Republicans say this is nothing more than an attempt to undo the 2016 election.
Adam Slinger is in the newsroom where the Articles of Impeachment are about to be delivered to the Senate. What are you seeing, Adam?
So CNN, guys, is reporting that the Senate will tell the House to come back tomorrow morning. Now, if that actually happens or not, we'll find out momentarily. Whether you agree or not with the impeachment, history is about to be made. For only the 3rd time in American history, a sitting president will be put on trial in the Senate. Here, let's go live real quick back to the Capitol. We'll walk you through what's moments away from happening. The Speaker of the House has selected 7 Democrats to act as the impeachment managers, and I believe we have a picture of the House floor. Essentially, these managers will act as prosecutors in the trial. The manager's job will be to convince the U.S. Senate that President Trump needs to be removed from office. What we're about to see here is a ceremonial walk. The managers will take the Articles of Impeachment from the House across the hall to the U.S. Senate, and that's where the trial will take place. Here's what the president said about this next chapter in the process.
If you want, you go out and vote. I'd rather have, frankly, it's not going to matter because it's going very well, but I'd rather have you voting than sitting here listening to me introduce you, okay? They have a hoax going on over there. Let's take care of it.
Okay, the president again calling the impeachment a hoax. The House is accusing the president of abuse of power. They say he asked a foreign government to investigate a political rival in exchange for financial aid. They're also accusing him of obstruction of Congress. So here's what happens after this ceremonial walk. Again, we'll stay on this picture right here. By Thursday evening, it is likely the Senate will complete all of the planning stages for the trial. The Senate Majority Leader says he expects the trial to begin on Tuesday. And Bob and Stacia, the trial could last for about 4 weeks. Again, we'll be watching this live here. We'll let you know what happens.
All right, Adam Slinger, live for us in the newsroom. Thank you. And you can watch live impeachment coverage on the free ABC 6 app. We're going to send you a push alert for all the biggest moments. It's also a way you can watch our newscast live even when you're not home. If you need the app, search for WSYX in your app store.
A major data breach is causing big problems tonight for nearly 100 Columbus Library employees. Thieves getting their names and personal info and then using it to open fraudulent bank accounts.
Investigator Rodney Dunnigan digging into the issue tonight. Rodney, when did they find out about this?
This all happened this weekend, guys. So basically, this was a pretty quick moving. One worker discovered that a fake bank account had actually been set up in their name. That started a domino effect. More people coming forward saying the same thing had been done to them. Tonight, investigators trying to track down those crooks, the library system trying to figure out how this all happened in the first place.
High-tech crooks causing serious issues for the Columbus Metro Library System. ABC 6 investigators learning at least 75 employees system-wide discovering fake checking accounts set up in their names. System spokesman Greg Dodd telling us most finding out this past weekend.
But we do take the safety and security of all of our staff very seriously, so we immediately filed a police report.
The scheme well thought out. The accounts have money deposited through payday loans, then withdrawn through debit cards.
Those accounts were set up at Huntington Bank. The Columbus Metropolitan Library now working with the bank and investigators to gather as much information as they can, working to get to the bottom of this scam.
There seems to be no distinct pattern And we just don't know at this point, but we continue to be diligent to determine what that cause was.
The library system is in the process of putting together a plan of action, including fraud protection for employees impacted, important steps as they try to determine how that information was accessed.
And something important to note tonight, no money was taken from these workers, but their identities were stolen. We're told that no customers of any area libraries have been impacted by this information breach. They stress that information is secure and no customers have come forward so far with any concerns. Of course, this is something that investigators will continue to track, and we'll let you know if we get any word of any additional problems. Bob?
Thank you, Rodney. Developing now, we're learning more about a double shooting that left a person dead. Breaking news this morning on Good Day Columbus. The two victims tried to escape, only to crash into a pole on Bremen Street near Loretta Avenue in Linden. And that's where we find our Maria Durant tonight. Maria?
Well, Bob, let me show you that pole where that car crashed into. You can take a look here. You can see it's kind of uprooted there, and it's tilting now, that utility pole. Luckily, it didn't come crashing down on anyone. And I want to show you some of the debris that's left behind, too, from the car. If you take a look here, you can see shattered glass still here along the street. This is what's left behind. The neighbors that I talked to say they are just glad no innocent bystanders were hurt. It's a busy neighborhood full of children and people walking around. So when gunshots rang out this morning,
pop, pop, pop like that.
Lydia Zabata says she immediately ran to her children.
I was just holding them.
Police tell me around 5 this morning, dispatchers received calls about gunfire erupting along Bremen Street and Loretta Avenue. The cones in the street mark some of the bullet casings found by detectives. Sandrine Taylor heard the shots.
And normally I hear my birds in the morning. So, you know, this morning I heard the bang, 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 but I really couldn't see or know what's going on.
The gunfire exploding a few blocks from where this car crashed. The car fleeing, crashing into this pole with such force that the car spun around, now facing the other direction. The two people inside, both shot, a female taken to the hospital, one man killed, leaving police now trying to figure out what led up to the shooting. And for this neighborhood, an early morning awakening they hope returns to silence.
I've been over here for about a year, and normally it's pretty quiet. You know, my neighbor here and around here, it's normally quiet.
And just moments ago, we did have a few police officers. They were on their bikes. They're still patrolling this area, seeing if anyone has any information about this shooting. And also, police just now released information about the identities of the victims, at least one of them. We know the woman who was transported to the hospital is 39-year-old Charlotte Drain. As for the person who died, police are not releasing the identity of that man just yet. They are still waiting to notify next of kin. In the Linden area, I'm Maria Durant, ABC 6 News.
Thank you, Maria. The Franklin County Family Court judge who admitted to driving drunk last year could get a public reprimand from the state. Judge Monica Hawkins pleaded guilty last year for driving drunk in Pickerington. Today, she agreed before Ohio's Board of Professional Conduct to receive a state reprimand. This will still need approval from the board and from the Ohio Supreme Court. Coming up at 6, Jeff Reddick breaks down today's hearing and why Hawkins' attorney is calling the OVI arrest a blessing in disguise.
6 men in Fairfield County facing solicitation charges after a human trafficking sting in the Canal Winchester area. Law enforcers calling this Operation Foul Ball. The 6 range in age from 32 to 50 and include a teacher, an architect, and someone working in finance. They will all be required to complete what's called John School. It's training that explains their role in human trafficking, prostitution, and more. And a sex offender charged with killing a 24-year-old woman in 2018 may end up waiving his right to a jury trial. At a status hearing today, lawyers for Anthony Pardon say that he's considering a bench trial. Pardon didn't appear today. The bench trial would be a panel of 3 judges instead of a jury. The defense wants to know who those 3 judges would be before making a decision, and they should know that in the next day or two. We'll, of course, let you know what they decide.
Boy, it was really murky for most of the day today. In fact, Still is. Can't see much at all from tower cam right now. So this is 200 feet above the ground, so it's stuck up in the cloud, but you're still getting a lot of that haze down at the surface. Columbus is reporting 1 mile of visibility, but 5 miles in Circleville, Lancaster at 4 miles, Newark and Delaware with 1 mile of visibility. So still plenty of fog and haze around the area this evening. Had a few places with some drizzle as well. Most of that is already moving off to the east and will continue to do that during the evening tonight. We're going to see the clouds stay fairly thick to begin with, but they'll break up a little bit during the overnight hours. We're also going to see the wind pick up tonight, and that's going to make it very chilly overnight tonight. Mild in the meantime. Temperatures close to 50 degrees as we go through the early evening tonight, dropping into the mid-40s by 11. And then we have a much cooler day on the way tomorrow. I'll show you how chilly and what wind chills to expect in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Marshall. Buckeyes fell just short of the national title, but they are ready to reload. The returning star expected to shine even brighter next season.
And we're on your side tonight, offering free legal advice. Lawyers are taking your calls right now until 6:30 tonight. Just dial the number on your screen, 614-481-6848. Happening right now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi walking over articles of impeachment to the Senate. We are taking you there live. She's joined by the 7 managers and 2 people with appointed roles, the House Clerk and the House Sergeant at Arms.
Now, they're going to take this approximately minute-and-a-half walk from the House of Representatives through the Capitol to the U.S. Senate, and along the way, they'll pass through a couple of important rooms in the Capitol, the National Statuary Hall and the famous Capitol Rotunda, and then they will deliver the 2 articles of impeachment, those for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
So here's what's next. By tomorrow night, it's likely the Senate will complete all the planning stages for the trial. They have to swear in all the senators as jurors. The Senate Majority Leader says he expects the trial to begin on Tuesday, and it could last 4 weeks.
Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts will be presiding over the Senate trial. And that is, of course, the trial to decide whether to remove the president from office. It requires a 2/3 majority in the Senate for that to happen. That means that more than a dozen Republicans would have to defect. Very unlikely that that would happen. Convict any fewer than 2/3 conviction means that President Trump would be acquitted.
Let's check in with investigative reporter James Rosen, joining us live now from Washington, D.C. So, James, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
It's certainly an extraordinary day on Capitol Hill and for the entire nation, Stacia and Bob, as we get ready for the House to transmit the articles of impeachment against President Trump to the upper chamber, the United States Senate, for a trial that we expect will begin less than a week from today, and which the White House is very confident will be over with within 2 weeks. Senior White House officials who briefed reporters on background today, who are very much involved in working on the president's defense, said that the allegations contained in the articles of impeachment will, quote, fail on their face, and that they expect Mr. Trump's attorneys to aim high here. They are not just going to use this trial to try to secure the acquittal of the president, as is all but an assured outcome, but also they're going to seek his vindication. That's a higher bar for any attorney to seek in a trial setting. But we also expect to see that there will be a continued fight over whether, during the course of this trial, new evidence, including new documents and new witnesses, will be admitted. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, will play a role in that, and of course the senators will vote on it. As of now, there is no agreement for any new evidence to be introduced. Right now, we expect that the trial will simply unfold where you will have the House managers, these Democratic lawmakers, present the case against the president, and his attorneys will present his defense. At that point, there will be a vote on the admissibility of new evidence, new witnesses. This all follows the same pattern that was and the same protocols that were adopted for the trial of President Clinton in 1999. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, has said he is confident that he has the votes to simply wrap the trial up after the presentation of the case against the president and the presentation of his rebuttal defense without the admission of any new witnesses or evidence. We heard Gerald Nadler of New York, one of the 7 House managers who's going to be trying the case against the president, say today that the American people have common sense, and they know that if a trial does not contain witnesses, it's not a trial, it's a cover-up. That is the kind of line that the president and his supporters will be combating as this proceeding unfolds. Bob and Stacia.
Well, James, how will the final rules be decided for this Senate trial? Because you talked about some of these notable folks involved in this. How does this unfold from here?
It's subject to a vote. The rules package for the Senate impeachment trial of the president is similar in that respect to other types of votes that occur on the floor of the House and the Senate. There's a rules package that has to be adopted. And as we were just discussing, Senator McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, believes he has the votes to conduct this trial in a way where you will have the case presented against the president, you'll have his defense mounted, and then there won't be the introduction of any new evidence into form of documents or witnesses. As we all know, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, whom we expect to see shortly, there she is now walking into the Capitol chamber there, joined by her fellow Democrats, preparing for this engrossment ceremony. This is where the final printed copies of the Articles of Impeachment will be signed by the relevant officers of the House and by the House Speaker and the managers, and then marched across the Capitol to the upper chamber for the trial. I suppose we should just listen in for a little bit and soak up this extraordinary historic scene.
James Rosen live for us tonight. Thank you very much. Following all the developments on Capitol Hill, as he said, we are going to be listening in as we await House Speaker Nancy Pelosi walking over the articles of impeachment to the Senate.
Earlier in the day, the House did approve the House managers, the Democratic House managers who will be accompanying her. And here we go as the Speaker now moves through the Capitol.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my colleagues. As you know, on December 18th, the House of Representatives upheld its constitutional duty and voted articles of impeachment against the President of the United States, Donald Trump. He said in the course of the debate that he did not uphold his oath of office to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the United States. The President takes a special oath, a little different from the congressional oath. In fact, he takes an oath that was taken by President George Washington, the patriarch of our country, in front of whose picture we stand here. So sad, so tragic for our country that the actions taken by the President to undermine our national security, to violate his oath of office, and to jeopardize the security of our elections, the integrity of our elections, has taken us to this place. So today, we will make history. When the managers walk down the hall, they will cross a threshold in history, delivering articles of impeachment against the President of the United States for abuse of power and obstruction of the House. As we make that history, we will be making progress for the American people. Progress in support of our Constitution, progress in honor of the sacrifice and the vision of our founders, progress in honor of the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and progress for the future of our children. Make it be very clear that this president will be held accountable, that no one is above the law, and that no future president should ever entertain the idea that Article 2 says that he can do whatever he wants. And so with that, I will sign the resolution transmitting the articles of impeachment to the Senate, which will be delivered by our managers, of whom I'm very proud. When they bring this over, we'll set in motion a process on the Senate side. Probably tomorrow, I don't know their schedule, but it may be as soon as tomorrow. The senators will take an oath of office. They will take a special oath of office to do impartial judges and do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws. Let's hope that they uphold that oath that they take tomorrow. And so now I'm very honored to be here with our six chairmen who worked so hard to help us uphold the Constitution with their legislating, their investigating, their litigating. You know, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee is part of the managers, Jerry Nadler, Mr. Schiff, the distinguished chairman of the Intelligence Committee, House Select Committee on Intelligence, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the chair of the Financial Services Committee, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, Madam Chair of the Oversight Committee, Congressman, Mr. Chairman Elliot Engel of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Richie Neal, Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. We thank them for all of their difficult work, and we honor our darling Elijah Cummings, who said, one day we were dancing with the angels, what would we say about what we did at this difficult time in our country's history? And then I'm very proud that Mr. Nadler and Mr. Schiff are part of our managers, but I want to acknowledge our other managers who are with us, a freshman member, but I shouldn't say freshman. These, because they've been here 1 year, accomplished great things. Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. Where are we? Congresswoman Val Demings of the state of Florida. Congresswoman Garcia of Texas. Were we all here? Where's Hakeem? Hakeem is our distinguished chair of our caucus. Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Is that everybody? And Zoe Lofgren. This is Zoe's third impeachment. She was for the Nixon impeachment, she was a staffer for a Judiciary Committee member, Don Edwards of California. She was a member of the Judiciary Committee during the Clinton impeachment, and in her own right, a member of the Judiciary Committee, and now a member of the Judiciary, chair of House Administration, which oversees elections, important to all of this, and a manager. So with that, I thank them all for their leadership and their service, and I'm now going to proceed to sign the articles.
Nancy Pelosi signing the articles of impeachment, right now signing the resolution, transferring the articles of impeachment right now, saying today, with this, they will make history, crossing a threshold of history, as she said, in the pursuit of progress for the Constitution and the future.
Does call it a sad and tragic day for the country that the president, in her words, violated his oath of office, but as Stacia said, making progress also in her words, and again transmitting those articles to the Senate along with the help of her 7 just approved managers on the prosecutorial side, and they include again Jason Crow of Colorado, Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, Val Demings of Florida, Sylvia Garcia of Texas, Hakeem Jeffries of New York, and Zoe Lofgren of California. The Judiciary Committee chairman is Nadler, and Adam Schiff, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, heading that team of managers that will walk those articles over to the Senate.
And so we will continue to follow this again as the articles of impeachment are transferred to the Senate from here after she signs the resolution. As we talked about, they will walk from the House of Representatives through the Capitol to the U.S. Senate. And along the way, they will pass through 2 important rooms in the Capitol, the National Statuary Hall and then the famous Capitol Rotunda. They're moving in so we can see a little bit closer as she signs the resolution. They will deliver the 2 articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
And for just the 3rd time, a U.S. president will be impeached and face a trial in the Senate. The other 2, of course, Bill Clinton and Andrew Johnson. And there is again some word from CNN tonight that the Senate may refuse to accept the articles of impeachment. So that would be some added drama to this historic setting here this afternoon. Obviously something we'll be watching for very closely here once the articles are signed and begin that short journey over to the Senate chambers.
And then here's what comes next. By tomorrow night, determining, of course, what happens when the articles arrive at the Senate, given what we're hearing from CNN that they may not be accepted there. But by tomorrow night, it could be the Senate completes the planning stages for this trial. They do have to swear in all the senators as jurors. The Senate Majority Leader saying he expects the trial to begin on Tuesday and that it could last for 4 weeks. But again, hearing from CNN today that it's possible the articles will not be accepted by Republicans on the Senate side.
If and once accepted, and the trial does begin next week as expected, the White House has announced that the president's defense team in the trial will include the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, who will serve as the lead counsel, Jay Sekulow, Mr. Trump's personal attorney, and the White House lawyers Patrick Philbin and Mike Purpura.
And she's away from the microphone, so it's hard to hear there, but it sounds like she said it's now time to move to the Senate side. So it appears that the walk begins in just moments. Again, transferring the articles of impeachment after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has just signed the resolution.
But first, the distribution of the historic pens. Again, only the third time that this ceremony has taken place regarding a U.S. president. In Congress, Andrew Jackson in 1868, Bill Clinton 1999. Both men, of course, ultimately acquitted in the Senate. Johnson by just one vote.
Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts will preside over the Senate trial. We know that. To actually remove a president from office requires a 2/3 majority in the Senate. That means more than a dozen Republicans would have to defect. That's considered very unlikely. Any fewer than a 2/3 conviction means President Trump would be acquitted.
This transfer is coming after a growing number of Democrats were beginning to break with Pelosi, insisting it was time to move ahead with the trial. She had been delaying the delivery of the articles to the Senate as Democrats and the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell disagreed over whether additional witnesses would be called to testify during the Senate trial. And it's seen by many now as a bit of a political victory for Leader McConnell, who was able to gather enough support from his moderate and politically vulnerable members for trial rules that to mirror those that were applied to Bill Clinton's impeachment trial. Now, McConnell now says that the House managers and the president's defense team will mount their respective arguments, and then the Senate will consider whether to hear from witnesses.
So it appears the walk begins now from the House to the Senate. Once again, the Speaker selected 7 Democrats to act as impeachment managers, and essentially those managers act as prosecutors in this trial. So their job is to convince the U.S. Senate that President Trump needs to be removed from office, and that's who you saw there along there with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and who will make the walk along with her. Their job is to convince the Senate President Trump needs to be removed. So this is a ceremonial walk, what we are about to see, and the managers will take the articles of impeachment from the House just signed across the hall to the U.S. Senate, and that's where the trial will take place.
Obviously, as you've been hearing for many weeks now, this is a very tall order for the House managers to convince the Republican majority in the Senate to vote to convict the president. A 2/3 majority is required in order for that conviction to result in the removal, or a conviction resulting in the removal from office of the president for the first time in American history. That is not expected to happen.
As we wait to see what happens here, they're in this walk. Checking the president's Twitter account right now, does not appear to have tweeted within the last 5 hours. So no word if he is watching as this unfolds right now. But we know in the past he has called the impeachment a hoax. The House, of course, accusing the president of abuse of power. He says it is a hoax.
Let's bring in Good Evening Columbus anchor Adam Slinger, also following this moment by moment, the movements of the impeachment articles. Adam, what are you seeing?
Hey guys, good evening to you. We can stay on these live pictures too. Feel free to jump in, Bob and Stacia, when you need to. So we're about to see, of course, the 7 managers walk the articles of impeachment over to the Senate. What's supposed to happen is the House clerk walks into the Senate and says, I have a message from the House. We are here to deliver the articles of impeachment. CNN is reporting that the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, will tell the House clerk, come back tomorrow morning and do it all over again. That's when they expect this to be read on the House floor. Again, we don't know if that's going to happen. That is what CNN is reporting is a possibility tonight. And based on the movement you see in these live pictures, it looks like we are about to see the 7 managers walk through. Very few rules have actually been set for the trial. Here are some rules that we found out today. There will be no phones during the trial. Senators cannot bring in their phones. They're also not allowed to talk to each other. It is supposed to be silent during the trial in the Senate. If a senator has to speak to the Chief Justice, who again presides over the trial as the judge, they have to address the Chief Justice as Mr. Chief Justice. And when they do have to vote, when they have to make that final vote or any other vote that may be necessary, they're asked to stand. Beyond that, we don't really have a lot of rules set in place. Again, we're still going to find out if this will be accepted tonight. CNN, as I said, saying that they're going to tell the House to come back tomorrow morning and then they will address the full Senate. We saw the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, sign the resolution to transfer the articles of impeachment just moments ago. So right now, guys, we're in kind of a holding pattern. This isn't that long of a walk. It should be less than, I believe, 5 minutes to walk from one chamber to the next. And it appears that they are walking in.
Republican senator actually did it in 90 seconds earlier this week, Adam, to show Nancy Pelosi the way in jest on Twitter. And here goes the walk here now.
We heard from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell earlier today expecting this to happen, as we heard this would happen. So as he said earlier on Twitter, it looks like today's the day House Democrats may finally stand behind the rushed, unfair, nakedly partisan impeachment that they themselves delayed for 4 weeks. The prosecutors have finally overcome their cold feet, as he described this. So again, in this moment, Nancy Pelosi saying they are crossing a threshold of history right now in this move, signing the resolution and transferring the articles of impeachment in the pursuit of progress for the Constitution and the future.
Through the statuary hall there they go now, and on through to the famous rotunda, and then to the Senate. The Democrats across the Hill have been demanding to hear from witnesses whom the White House had blocked from testifying to the House impeachment inquiry here, and the investigators there, those witnesses believed to have firsthand knowledge of Trump's dealings with Ukraine. So this delivery of the articles of impeachment has been delayed, as Stacia said, for several weeks now, while that haggling went on with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. But apparently obviously the walk is underway now. The delay is over. And we are told that the trial could begin as early as next week, but it remains to be seen if, in fact, the articles are accepted by the upper chamber now.
Yeah, so next Tuesday is when they say the trial could begin. We're hearing between 2 and 4 weeks. These 7 managers, again, you're going to hear that term, impeachment managers. Just remember, they're essentially the prosecutors in this case. The White House will then send over its own team to defend the president. What's crazy about all of this over the next 2 to 4 weeks is that there is still a lot going on in the world of politics. The president is supposed to give his State of the Union address on February the 4th, in the middle of the impeachment or the impeachment trial. At the same time, we have 3 senators who have to act as jurors who are running for the Democratic nomination for president. They will essentially have to suspend, or rather take some time off the campaign while the trial is ongoing. And this is a critical time in the campaign. We have the Iowa caucuses beginning next month. This is when they need to be front and center to get their message out. And with this trial, Bob and Stacia, they won't be able to do that.
Well, we talked earlier about House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signing the resolution and transferring the articles of impeachment, but it doesn't appear she is walking over with the managers right now. The impeachment managers appear to be taking the articles of impeachment over to the Senate side. Again, 2 articles of impeachment as they are being delivered: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. You can see quite a crowd forming there as well, as those articles are received.
Yeah, witness to history. And Adam, you're mentioning all that's going on the periphery here today, not the least of which was a trade deal, at least the first phase of one, announced between the U.S. and China today that may end some of these tit-for-tat tariffs that have been going back and forth between the two countries for over a year now, causing great heartache on both borders. Again, that was announced today, but obviously taking an enormous backseat, at least on the Capitol, although the Dow responded very favorably to that today.
Yeah, and the president was asked during that event with representatives from China today what he thought about all of this going on at the Capitol. And once again, as we've heard many times, he's called it a hoax. You have to remember that Democrats insist they are doing what's right. They believe they are fulfilling their obligation. Republicans say this is just another attempt to overturn the 2016 election, and they stand by that. You have to get 2/3 of the Senate to oust President Trump, to remove him from office. The Republicans control the Senate. It's very unlikely that you're going to get more than a dozen Republicans to side with Democrats in this case. So for the third time in history, it looks like a president will most likely be acquitted in the trial.
Perhaps to the benefit of the American people in this case, it'll be an opportunity for these House managers, the prosecutors, to crystallize the evidence that they've gathered through the various hearings for the American public, spell it all out cohesively, and of course the defense can counter that and will. But it is an opportunity now for Americans who've been sort of watching these disparate groups come together, these various hearings over several months now, finally to hear the entire narrative based on the evidence that they've found. If in fact that begins, and we expect it will shortly.
Once again, we are hearing CNN reporting that Senate Republicans plan to not accept the articles of impeachment once delivered, and it appears we have lost sight of where they are in the walk, viewing the Senate side where a crowd awaits the arrival of the articles of impeachment after being signed by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just moments ago.
Yeah, and the reason we don't know really what's going to happen is because a lot of these rules and regulations, we never use them, right? This is only the third time in history that a president has been impeached and moved to the Senate for a trial. So does the Senate actually have the right to refuse the articles and say, come back at a time that we decide? They say yes. We'll find out if that is the case tonight. CNN is saying that the Democrats still believe that the Republicans will accept the articles tonight, but Republicans telling CNN that's not going to be the case. They are going to tell the House clerk who's supposed to deliver this message, not tonight, come back tomorrow, and that's when we will address the full Senate. Bob and Stacia, we don't know why. After all of this time, after 4 weeks of waiting, why push it back another day?
And if not for the gravity and the historic nature of this, Adam, it seems almost quaint that these leaders, these most powerful people in Washington, would walk down a hallway, knock on a door, and present this to an upper chamber, only to have it turned away. It is rather unusual, to say the least, and really a little bit odd, but again, historic.
Well, no matter what happens from here, as we heard from Speaker Pelosi earlier today and in previous days, the president has been impeached, and that is forever, as she has said. Say he was frivolous with the Constitution and that the Senate should not be. So seeing what happens now as the articles of impeachment are delivered will be history making as well.
And real quick, I want to talk again about the 2020 election, because as I said, we have 3 senators who are going to miss a lot of the campaigning over the next few weeks. They have to leave the campaign trail. We have a senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. All 3 of them have to take time out, and they've said they will. They want to be there for the actual trial. But this is critical. I mean, Iowa is the first state to throw their support behind a Democratic nominee for president, and that begins in, 2 weeks now? 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, the dates they will flummox me. I won't even make a stab at it, but coming up within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, Adam. And again, they're gone from the trail, but certainly not forgotten and certainly not invisible, because they'll be front and center during this trial.
But like you said, because of the timeline that we are given, if the trial begins tomorrow or next week, we're talking about 2 to 4 weeks of, as you said, critical time on the campaign trail. So this affects both parties significantly in significant ways for 2020 election.
And regardless of what they say on the campaign trail right now, this could be the defining moment as far as the election is concerned in the eyes of the base for both parties. And this has certainly been, has lit a firestorm, at least as far as fundraising goes, under those who support the president, because each time there is a development in this, his well-oiled machine tweets out and posts out pledges or offers for folks to send in money, and they are always responded in kind with large amounts of fundraising. So it's really proven to be, at least as far as fundraising goes, a very positive thing for the president's campaign, this entire impeachment process.
And speaking of tweeting, at this point, still no word from President Trump as far as whether or not he's watching. No doubt in the past calling this a hoax, and we could hear more from him tonight. But the latest tweet from the president at this point is the latest on his Phase 1 trade agreement signed earlier today, and that was about 5 hours ago.
A surreal moment, I'm sure, for him as he's signing that with Chinese representatives, all the while being impeached by Congress. The Associated Press now reporting that the articles are officially in the Senate's hands. So apparently they've done an end run on the cameras there. But the Senate does have the articles of impeachment now, and we'll be back right after this. That ODOT has to pay the owner of a Wendy's in Licking County.
It's because of a change to the intersection that cost the restaurant prime access to highway traffic. Tom Bosco with the highway project costing ODOT even more tonight.
Take a look at this Wendy's. You can't get there from here anymore. Well, you can, but it's going to take a little more effort. Here's what the intersection of State Route 16 and Cherry Valley Road used to look like. It had a traffic light, so State Route 16 had to come to a stop. In 2016, ODOT took away the light and began building the Thornwood Crossing interchange. Great for drivers on 16, but lousy for the guy selling nuggets, Frosties, and square hamburgers. Drivers can no longer just turn off to get to Wendy's. They've got to get off the highway, negotiate 3 traffic lights, and go about 1.5 miles to get to this Wendy's. Linda Abel stopped by for lunch and fully admits what her vice is.
Oh, French fries.
She works on this side of the highway.
Because I'm already on that side, it isn't so bad now.
But what if she's driving on 16 and wants a Frosty?
Coming home from Columbus and then want to stop at Wendy's, I go to the one in Heath because of the road, yes.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. The owner of this Wendy's took ODOT to the Ohio Supreme Court. Attorneys told justices sales have dropped since the highway improvements.
When the current use has had a $1 million essentially reduction in sales per year, that is a reflection of a significant injury.
And they claimed they had an agreement with ODOT made back in 1961 promising the owners would have access to the highway.
Now that point of access is eliminated. It's gone from our client's property.
And now the justices have agreed and are going to make the state pay.
It makes a statement, doesn't it?
So ODOT says that it is reviewing that order. That order just came down today. How much is ODOT going to pay? Well, that's not clear right now. The next steps in this case are that a jury will have to be seated, and that jury is going to decide what the compensation will be. Now, the Bob Evans and the Speedway on this side of the highway had also sued the state, claiming the same thing. However, the state justices, that is, found that these two businesses did not have that same 1961 agreement, so the Supreme Court threw out their claims. In Newark, live in Newark, I'm Tom Bosco, ABC 6 News.
All right, Tom, thank you. We'll take you live back now to Washington, D.C. The Capitol is a place of history tonight as the House has just transferred the articles of impeachment to the Senate. And Majority Leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, says that at noon Eastern tomorrow, the Senate will receive the managers, the prosecutors, on the part of the House of Representatives in order that they present and exhibit the articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump.
In the meantime, it is a murky evening here in Columbus. Your Tempstar heating and cooling current conditions, though, are very mild. We're still at 52 in Caldwell. Most of the area in the upper 40s right now. So you're still going to want a good jacket, but it's mild for this time of the year. 32 overnight tonight. Little drizzle out there now and some haze bordering on fog. Some areas down to less than a mile of visibility. And it's going to get breezy tonight. As that wind picks up, that will help break up some of the fog. Here's what it looks like for your Thursday. Some cold air coming in from the north and northwest, and that is going to keep us very chilly tomorrow. But it's circulating around some high pressure. And you know what we do with high pressure. We get some nice clear sky. So we're going to open up those clouds during the afternoon tomorrow, and that is going to give us a nice but chilly day. It's also going to make sure that the Cleveland area ends up with a bunch of lake effect. With that open water, we're going to drag some cold air across it, pick up the moisture, and create lake effect snow. So a gusty northwest breeze tomorrow. Could see wind gusts of up to about 30 miles per hour, and that's going to push your wind chills into the upper 20s for a lot of the daytime. Our temperatures themselves will hover in the mid-30s. But we'll have sunshine here. That's the good news. Cleveland will have the lake effect snow to deal with. Your wind chills, there they are, in the mid to low 20s during most of the daytime tomorrow, with temperatures staying in the 30s. At the bus stop, bundle up. It's going to be a chilly one. We're going to be at around 35 degrees, but the wind will make it feel even colder. And then in the afternoon, surprisingly, the temperatures will be cooler than in the morning with some partly cloudy skies. So this 34 isn't actually the high for the day. That'll happen early in the morning, but this is what it'll feel like in the afternoon with wind chills in the 20s. Otherwise, partly cloudy, breezy, and colder. By the time we get to Friday, the high only 34 during the day, and will be mostly cloudy because Friday night is when this begins to arrive. This low pressure center is going to start pushing some rain, snow mix and snow into Ohio during the evening hours. And then overnight, we may see a little of that collect, especially in eastern and northeastern Ohio. But during the day on Saturday, it warms up to become rain. That's going to get rid of whatever's on the ground. Then in the evening, this changes over again, and we end up with some accumulating snow for the later half of the day. I think across the middle of the state, you're looking at mostly just a quarter to half inch, but a few patches of up to an inch. North of Columbus, north of Delaware and Coshocton, you're going to get 1 to 3. So not a big snow event for us, but one that we're going to keep an eye on. Now we're going to transition between lots of different kinds of precipitation on Saturday. We'll start out with the snow and rain snow mix into some rain, then back into rain snow mix and snow. It'll be the snow showers in the evening that then accumulate. 47 during the day. A colder day on Sunday, 26. A good breeze out of the northwest, creating a few flurries, and then 28 on Monday, 29 on Tuesday, and back into the 30s on Wednesday.
Thanks, Marshall. A girl in Youngstown is training for a regional boxing tournament. Even more impressive, she's just 10 years old.
Zion Hensley is in the 70-pound weight class. She got hooked on boxing when she was 8. Her dad saw her interest in the sport and signed her up at an area club. If you ask her trainer, she's determined to become the best boxer in the world.
Yeah, no, she doesn't do anything lightly. She works hard. She runs hills at the Lake Milton Dam. You know, she runs around with logs on her shoulders. I mean, she is one of the hardest, toughest little 10-year-old girls I've ever met, and it's no joke to her.
Hensley wants to compete in the Olympics and turn pro. Her training is already paying off. She just had her first fight at a tournament in Akron.
Well, I actually was kind of nervous, but excited at the same time. But then once I got through the first round, I was excited.
Well, the fight didn't last long after the first round. Hensley won by TKO in the second, and then the entire tournament. Next up, the regionals this weekend in Cleveland. That'll be followed by the junior nationals in Kansas City. Her trainer says she has a real shot at winning the silver gloves, which would make her the top-ranked boxer in her weight class in the country.
Straight ahead at 6, a high or moderate risk for radon. That's the entire state of Ohio, and it could include your home. We'll help you stop a silent killer without spending any money.
And she wasn't sober as a judge last February. And now a family court judge who drove drunk faces her own judges.
And Millie has decades of experience, but she proves she's thoroughly modern. We revisit the hardest working hardware store clerk straight ahead at 6. In the football fever, Ryan Day with his first address since the season ended in the Fiesta Bowl.
Clay Hall reports the hot topics include targeting, Justin Fields, Corey Dennis, and Clemson.
The Buckeyes lost one of their top defenders to a targeting call in the Fiesta Bowl.
Shaun Wade's ejection controversial in the Buckeye State.
It's in there for the right reasons, but there is some gray area there that sometimes is hard, so totally get that.
Day was asked repeatedly about Corey Dennis, who received a huge promotion from quality control to quarterbacks coach of a top 5 program.
Are you more comfortable doing it here because quarterbacks are your area of expertise?
Yes.
Okay. And
I feel like I'm being like, at the stand right now.
No, well, counselor.
Yeah.
You can object to the questions too.
Plead the fifth.
Day thrilled that Justin Fields has another season as a Buckeye. His injured knee will have no issues going forward.
I feel like over the last 8 years, haven't had a quarterback that has started and then come back and had another year with him. This is the first time I've had him since I can remember. So that's exciting.
Has he moved on after the season-ending loss to Clemson?
As opposed to every other second. Yeah. I mean, especially when the game was played, Monday night and just right there front and center. It's hard to let go. I'm just telling you, it's hard, and we're not going to let go. I think you do have to move on with your life, but at the same time, we talked to the team that we're not just going to flush this. This is going to be here for a long time.
The coach said 2019 was a successful year, but the Bucs didn't reach their goals, so that keeps them wanting more. At Ohio State, I'm Clay Hall for the Football Fever.
Coming up next at 6, do what you love and never stop. Sounds like the secret to a long and happy life, and Millie proves it. We'll pay a return visit to a woman who lives long and prospers as she marks a milestone next on ABC 6 News at 6.